So our guest that we are lucky enough to have with us here, right beside me, is Tasha Belix, registered psychologist, specialized in youth and family for 20 years. Oh, no, that's not you. You're April. But I'm going to talk about Tasha, and then you're going to speak.
It would be less confusing.
Right? Let me talk about April first, then I want to talk about Tasha. April, pediatrician, adolescent medicine specialist at the Alberta Children's Hospital. We met, yes, last year. Clinical associate professor in the Department of Pediatrics, University of Calgary. Instrumental in developing adolescent health as a subspecialty. Founder of the Calgary Adolescent Treatment Services, a street youth clinic. Multiple publications on adolescent brain development and health. She is something else, and we are lucky she is with us here. Can we please welcome Dr. April to the stage? Thanks for being here. Now, Tasha, people have your book at their tables, so that's you. She's a registered psychologist, specialized in youth and families for 20 years, a consulting psychologist at Strathcona Tweedsmuir School, and she is also joining us. Now, before we applaud, Tasha is going to help set up our conversation. So we're going to applaud as she stands, and our applause is going to be so warm and so encouraging that it's just going to launch you into your speech. Would you please welcome Tasha? Thanks for being here, Tasha.
Thank you. I feel really honored to get to introduce this subject because it's very near and dear to my heart. And we're going to unpack it in about, I'm given 10 minutes, but I might go 11 as a panel so that you really walk away with some tools in your pockets and integrate some of this learning right away in your lives. But as a quick anxiety 101 lesson, we need to know a couple things. And the first one is that we've got this really cool thing. It's in our brain, the longest nerve in our brain. It's our vagus nerve. It runs, it wraps around our heart, it grabs information from our gut, and it dumps it on the right side of our brain. And if we stimulate this, we actually start to find some calm. And this is something that we can do to kind of dial our anxiety down. So I'm big into experiential kind of teaching, because if you do something and you feel different, I know that you're going to learn it at a deep level. So I know you're eating, but I'm going to ask that you put a hand on your belly. Awesome. Yes, we're all going to do it. And just as a group, we're just going to take a nice deep breath in. And a slow exhale out, and I want to hear some noise. Nice. I think half of us did that. We're going to do it 2 more times. A nice breath in. And 1 more breath in. And just notice what you feel in your body. We've done something to help our nervous systems get more cued in to where we are right now, because what we're talking about is really important. I have a brother who's a year younger than me who has schizophrenia. And so from a very young age, I know what it's like to be in a family where someone struggles. And families are kind of like a mobile. And so even when one person is struggling, we know that it has an impact on the whole family system. And from those experiences of my brother and kind of how I grew up, I had a real heightened sensitivity and a deep empathy for kids that fell through the cracks. And I started my career in my early 20s supporting young teens, mostly girls, who had been recruited into the sex trade and were sexually exploited in Vancouver and Surrey to get stabilized into secure foster treatment. I've worked with refugees. I've worked in drug and alcohol treatment. And I've worked with a lot of youth in Calgary that are homeless. These are amazing young people that really need someone to be an advocate to help understand what they've been through and who they can grow into being. And then about 6 years ago, when you work in the trauma world, it can kind of traumatize the people that are working around that kind of energy as well. And I did a big pivot in my career. And I started to look at a new group of youth. And on a kind of a selfish level, I wanted to make sure that what I was learning and what I was reading about was going to benefit my own family and my kids' friends and the people that were maybe closer in my social world. And I was really lucky. I was supervised by Lois Sapsford, who's the clinical director at Juno House. And I learned a new way of looking at anxiety and a new way of understanding how we can help people that might look pretty amazing on the outside to feel more authentic and more in tune with who they are. So I started to work with a very different kind of clientele group. The clients look kind of like this. I am a top student at my school. I'm an amazing athlete. I'm someone that takes great care of my friends. If you call me, I will always have time to listen to you. Always. Even if it comes at a cost to myself. I'm someone that parents don't really worry about because I'm really good at zipping up a costume, of looking like I'm perfect on the outside, but on the inside it doesn't always feel so good. I don't really know how to voice what I need, and it comes at a cost to who I am and how I feel all the time. I know how to do, but I can't really sit still and be within myself. I might be from an affluent family. I might be someone that teachers celebrate, but I'm really, really struggling. And that's the new at-risk youth that we're seeing show up in mental health clinics and accessing counseling. And these are young people that we wouldn't have had on our radar before. And these are young people that we need to have on our radar because they look pretty shiny on the outside, but maybe what's going on the inside doesn't feel so great. Here's an article I came across earlier this fall in a newspaper. So last year, a report by Robert Wood Johnson Foundation came to a similar conclusion when it named the top environmental conditions harming adolescent wellness. Among them were poverty, trauma, discrimination. That all made sense. And the fourth one is excessive pressure to excel, often but not exclusively occurring in affluent communities. I may be looking at one of those communities right now. It might sound counterintuitive or even perverse to put relatively affluent kids in the same category as our country's most vulnerable youth. While the stressors might be markedly different, researchers are finding that they are both at risk for elevated levels of chronic stress that can affect both their health and well-being. This is what I'm seeing in my office all the time now. Never before would we have realized that youth were going to struggle so much. And so I think it's really important that we talk about what exactly is stress and the difference between stress and anxiety. And so stress is part of life. It's activating. If we do something with it, it gets us ready to perform. And anxiety is not something that it's something that's depleting to our body, and it's toxic, and we shouldn't have to just tolerate it. And here's kind of what I mean. If I'm a teenager and I'm in calculus class and my teacher says, hey, you know, we're gonna have a math test in 2 days, I might feel a little bit of stress because I wanna do well on my test, I've got some goals in life. I'm gonna use that activation. There might be some adrenaline going off in me, my stress level might go up, cortisol will be rushing through my system, and it's gonna activate me. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna study. So that's good stress. And come day of the test, I might be, wake up a bit nervous, have trouble eating my breakfast. I may go one last bathroom break before I take my exam, but if I've studied properly and it's a fair test, that stress level is gonna come down, I'm gonna perform well, and I'm gonna go back to baseline. It's a perfect world, I might get to go home and have a bit of a rest before I get ready to do something else. But it's not happening like that for a lot of youth nowadays. I do the test, but I don't have the same kind of downtime to regulate my system and move that stress hormone out of my body. I take the test, and I come home, and I start an essay that's due in 2 days. Whoop. And then I need to get ready for my practice, where I'm on and I need to perform, and it goes up again. And then I need to, I'm coming home late, I'm wolfing down my dinner, I'm checking my Instagram at the same time, making sure that I'm keeping up with my social world online, and I go to bed and I'm exhausted, but my brain won't settle down. And so I'm thinking about the places where I could have been better and what I could have done differently, and I'm thinking ahead about what I need to do tomorrow, and I go to sleep finally, but I'm waking up and I'm at an elevated stress level. That might be familiar not only just to our youth, but also to us. And so when stress becomes chronic, that's what we call anxiety, and that's the stuff that we know is really toxic for a system. So what do we do about it? It's one thing to say, okay, great, I'm glad that's going on, but how can we as parents or grandparents or aunties and uncles that are here today do something different to help our kids bring their baseline down? And one of the things that we know is super duper effective is to validate. And validating, it is a hard skill to do as a parent, because what you're seeing in the moment you might not always agree with, but it's super duper nourishing, effective, to be able to say, I see what's going on for you, I understand it, and it makes sense to me. It's kind of like an elevator. So when our ground level is logic, when we get triggered and we have a big emotional eruption, anyone with teenagers knows exactly what this is like. They happen in my house daily, and not only just teenagers, also for me. But when we have that big emotional meltdown, it's like logic that's on the bottom. We've gone up to the top floor of that building, and we're fully in emotion. And so by acknowledging what someone's feeling and taking some time to listen to them and have them vent about it, you're helping take that emotional level and regulate your brain and bring it back down to a place where you're at the ground floor with an integrated brain. So the elevator door opens and hopefully out pops a logical teenager that you can kind of talk to in the moment. So validate, super duper important. If you look in your book, there's even a little cheat sheet in there that tells you how to do it. And so with our student that looks like they're hovering at this level, it could sound kind of like this. I can see how overwhelmed and stressed you are. You've got this never-ending list of stuff that you always have to get done. And it's like there's never enough time. I can just imagine how hard it is for you, because you're someone that cares so much about doing well at school, and you put a lot of pressure on yourself. And it feels like you cross one thing off your list and then another thing pops up. This is tough, and I'm here to listen. And that's where it stops. We also know that it's really, really important that people get enough sleep. And you know, the average teen, I think in Canada, 27% actually are sleep deprived. The average teenager is supposed to get about 9 to 10 hours of sleep. We know that that's not realistic on a daily basis. It's not unusual for people to stay up late, pulling all-nighters to finish their work, but we know that that's not good for their brain. And it's not good for your brain because you need a chance to recharge. You need a chance to integrate what you've learned in the day so that you can wake up with that stress level at baseline so that you're able to regulate your emotions, learn properly in class, manage what you need to get done in a day. So that's why that piece is really important. We've heard about it so many times. Parents, take your screens out of the bedroom. But parents, take their screens out of their bedrooms. It is really, really hard for an adolescent to resist the urge to check one more text or to not support their friends in the night, or look at, you know, if you're having trouble falling asleep, to start another like Grey's Anatomy episode. But we know how critical sleep is, so get those out of the room. And if you can turn them off 2 hours before bedtime, that is like gold standard. It may not be realistic. 1 hour before bedtime. So that will be the second one. And lastly, we also need to check in with our own stress levels. So if we're at that place where we're hovering on high, we're not going to be able to be really present for our kids and hear what they need to tell us. If they're struggling with anxiety, they might be really good at hiding that stuff from us. So we need to be cued in and attentive so we can see some of the subtle behaviors that might tell us that we need to worry. So if you know, I sat here today, I'm like already thinking about the grocery list that I need to get on the way out of here. or the next meeting that I have to go to, you might decide, what's one thing that I can do that will calm my stress level down? It could be going to bed 15 minutes earlier, doing those belly breaths once in a while through your day, doing something that you love so that you can be more present for your kids. Because if you can be the healthiest version of you, it really is the best gift that you can give your kids, hands down. And so, another piece that I think is pretty important to kind of sort of summarize and bring together for you guys is whether you've got kids here that are 6 or 7 years old that you're like, they're doing pretty well. Or I've got this little munchkin that kind of worries a lot. I wonder if that means that those are the training wheels for someone to have an anxiety disorder. Know this. We want to not jump ahead to what could be, but know what can we do right now to do some changes and tweaks in our world so that we support our kids where they are. Because that little 7-year-old that worries, that's okay. We're there to help regulate them and help them out. We might have a young person that is, the person that's got a room full of trophies but might be quite disconnected and struggling with kind of who they are, or someone that's the 95% student that thinks they're a failure if they get anything below that. And know that whether it's emotional pain or physical pain, pain is pain and it's part of the human condition. And so we as parents, if our kids came home with a broken leg, we would jump into action. We'd give them the support that they needed. And I'm asking that if it's emotional pain, that we catch that stuff and treat it the same way. Pain looks the same in your brain, whether it's physical or emotional, and we want it gone. We also know that we need to make sense of our big emotions with somebody else. So our relationship with our kids is kind of like if we're the roots that help keep them grounded, our relationship helps them weather that storm. So we want to really work on that and know that we have a huge role in being able to support our kiddos. And without a doubt as well, we know that if problems stay in isolation, there's no way that they can get solved. It doesn't matter how independent and how capable you are in lots of ways. We are mammals at the forefront of who we are and how our brain works, and we need to be in relationship with another person to be able to make sense of that hard stuff. And so I'm leaving you with this challenge. I hope that when you walk out of here today, that you listen to your kids in a way that doesn't just use your ears, but you really slow it down and listen with your hearts, and really listen to what you might not have heard before, because our kids and the youth today need people to see them and get them in real time, face to face, like never, ever before in history. And so if you walk home today and open the door and walk into that teenager that's at their elevator's at the top floor, or maybe everyone in your house is in the top floor, Mom, you can't believe what's happening. Put your hand on your belly. Take a deep breath. Regulate yourself, number one. Show up for your young person, whoever's there, and just listen. You might be really surprised what you're going to hear. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you so much, Tasha. Look at you go. Perfect work.
Thank you.
So I heard an expression once that it applied to mums, but I think it can apply to dads as well, as they say, this is how delivery works. You go in there, and they take the baby out, and they put the guilt in, and then you're set. And I think a lot of us sitting here will go, I think I'm doing it wrong, or I want to be doing it wrong. People say that parents today are overprotective. True, false? When people say, is that inaccurate? Do you see results, either of you, of that? And is that something that's legitimate that we need to worry about? That I need to feel guiltier about?
Hello, yes. Wow. So first of all, I think, there's different names that are out there these days. People have heard of the helicopter parent. Have you heard of the lawnmower parent? Anybody?
What's that one?
You're always cutting their grass. You're right close to their, as you do so. And it's just getting in their business, so close up into their business. And I'm going to suggest another type of parenting that I think is just a fabulous metaphor. It's lighthouse parenting. And lighthouse parenting is when you give unconditional love, you shine the light on, developmentally appropriate risks for them. Unconditional love is part of it, is not unconditional approval. People get confused. You have to have boundaries.
Yeah.
And finally, you have to let them fail. They have to fail and they have to fall within the confines of your boundaries.
But that's hard to do because... Well,
It is hard to do.
It is hard to do because I'm going to say, I'm going to let you fail, but I don't want you to fail right here, right now. I'm going to let you fail theoretically somewhere.
Well, and that, whether it's the lawnmower parent or the curling parent, so you're like clearing the path for your kids.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, they're 6. I'm going to get them into med school. We're doing Kumon, right? And so it's, if you decide, I'm enlightened, I'm going to let them fail, which absolutely is the way to go. We know this.
Yeah.
You have to be ready for your peers to go, you don't have your kids doing 8 activities? How are they going to get to meds? There's some pressure from parents. It's the norm to over-parent. And so it really is, it's competitive in parenting. All these things that we're like, where the heck did this come from?
Yeah.
We're seeing, and it absolutely is, it comes at a cost to how young people are, they're not given the chance to flop over and dust themselves off and realize how capable they are. And it comes from a loving place, really, where parents are plowing the path for their kids. We want them to do well. We don't want them to hurt and struggle.
You know how many parent-teacher interviews my dad went to? Give or take, 0. About, right? Do you know how many I've been to? My kids are 8 and 6. I think I've been to a couple of hundred already. So it's also it's structurally, I'm way more involved in every part of my kid's life than, I don't know that my dad noticed me for a good part of growing up. So,
but that's
sorry.
a good.
How do you feel about that?
That must have been really tough.
Yes.
No, I'm just joking.
2 counselors at the same time.
You walked into it.
Yeah.
But so you might not have had the same attentive, someone watching over you, but ta-da, here you are. You seem like a relatively well-adjusted,
Give or take.
capable person, right?
So the book Grit came out, and I don't know if any of you have read the book Grit, which is all about, it doesn't matter if your kids have math skills. I mean, it does. It doesn't matter if they can read. I mean, it does. But what's most important is that they have grit, this ability to overcome challenges. And I was like, yes, true, false, and how do I do that? Go. If you guys could just fix my kids and fix me, that would be awesome.
Okay, well, I'm going to go back to Tasha. Thank you so much for that passionate talk. And I took out of that some of foundational things that I'm always impressing upon parents. So much of it is about coaching parents. You all have the answers in you. You do. You all have the answers. And it's about some guidance and coaching where that is. And so on the topic of grit, I think it's about that foundational thing. Are they able to recognize the building blocks to get somewhere? Do they have that working memory? Can you help them? Oh, you've done that before, right? With this quality, which is grit.
Yeah.
You can call it grit. You can get that get up and go, that let's do it. And we're going to apply that to the next. So you're not telling them what to do, but you're showing them. And that grit is that ability. And stop, oh, you're so great. Oh, you look so pretty. Or it's more like, wow, you're really capable. And you might not have been able to do it that time, not yet.
Right.
But you're learning, and that was fantastic, and let's go. Let's see it again. That's grit.
And that word yet is really important. I can't do it. This is too hard.
Yet.
You can't do it yet, right? And I'm just giving you that belief that I know you're going to get there, like that little nudge along. I think it's really important. And as we're talking about anxiety, and I think it's important to know how anxiety has the ability to kind of naturally when we get nervous to do something. If there was a dog here snarling and was going to eat me,
Yeah.
I probably am going to say, bye guys, I'm going to move off the stage. But that snarling dog might be public speaking. That snarling dog might be trying out for a soccer team that I really like.
Right.
And if my reaction is to do this, and my support team around me goes, oh, I know, it's so scary, like, let's find a way to avoid that, which we do, because we see our kids struggling, and we see the real fear in their eyes,
Yeah.
and that, like, why on earth would I ever put you in front of a snarly dog? But we actually need to say, maybe it's teaching some brain science, what's going off in your brain, that you've got this part of your brain called your amygdala. It is super cool, it keeps you safe, but it sometimes is overactive. So what do we need to do? And if we know it as parents, what do we need to do to validate where our kids are at and help them turn and face that fear in small steps? And so even that is learning grit, right? So anxiety can make a world smaller and smaller and smaller. Or if we appreciate what's going on and breathe through it and find baby steps to face it, we're actually growing our capacity to cope. And that gets you to a place where you're an adult. I don't know.
So,
We
yeah.
all have stuff we're working on, but more functioning at a higher level, where anxiety doesn't cripple your life the same way as it does for so many people nowadays.
Yeah, and I think if you want sort of like a paradigm or an overarching philosophy, it really is the growth mindset. And I'm sure people have heard of that. Carol Dweck, she's a psychologist out of Stanford. She's done so much work, and she's changed the lives of some young people who basically were destined. People assumed that they weren't smart because they came from so low socioeconomic status. She has proven that we have a growth mindset at every stage of development, whether it's children, youth, adults. If we have a growth mindset, we can go beyond our expectations. And so really it's about that. Grit is a part of that growth mindset.
Right. How do I know if we say it's healthy? And you spoke a little bit about this. At what point, or what can I see with my kids where anxiety's too much, where they're showing, okay, this is where I need to be concerned versus that's normal?
I think part of it is age and stage. So younger kids, and if you have a little person that tells you what's going on, you kind of know,
Yeah.
because they're the worry bubble, right? Oh, like I'm having trouble falling asleep and I'm worried about this, and can I tell you all these things, and I'm looking for reassurance. But it doesn't always get articulated that way.
Yeah.
It can sometimes be, and lots of us, we feel stuff in our stomachs and our bodies, right? So, it's a stomach ache that I always get on Sunday nights or before school. And so when you start to see those patterns, or I get headaches sometimes and I don't know why, or exploding into big, tears and emotion, really angry about stuff, that sometimes as parents I need to stop my kid from being so whiny, or man, I need to work on their anger. And we look at the behavior, but we might be missing some of the physiology and some of the stuff that's going on underneath it. So really there's not a clear answer, but those would be some of the things. And I spoke to it a bit in my intro. Yeah. Teens don't always, again, verbalize and vocalize what they're feeling. And so it is not atypical for people to say, like, come across as everything's great, but behind a closed door, everything isn't great. You have no idea about the pressure I put on myself. And over again, I'm shocked. The solution is so simple. What is it that you would want your mom or dad to do differently? I just want them to listen to me. And it's kid after kid after kid after kid. And I'm like, so I think if they knew this, they would be there for you. What are they not doing that doesn't, why does it not feel like listening? Starters, they talk too much. So it's really cool, brain popping cool. The word listen also can be scrambled into silent. And so that would be a piece of it.
I have never heard that in my life. That is so good.
Yeah, and people will be like, is this
Can you do
true?
that again?
No, so remember that, right? So, and it is, people want to coach, teach, like, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. And we do it all the time. And so I want them to listen to me. Doesn't mean, how could you get a better mark on the test that you just brought back? Like, let's figure it out. Let's coach you up so that we, And it's really like, it's let me just feel sad about what I got, because P.S., I probably have my own inner voice that's putting me down myself, and let me just talk about my experience. Yeah.
And one of the things I think is really important, and as a pediatrician that sees adolescents all the time, now I'm finding more and more families are coming and young people are coming with what we call somatic symptom. Or somatic symptom disorder. And that's when the body talks, right? And so everyone's on this search for the rare and the wonderful. And really what they needed was their parents to sit and listen to the words that they were saying, but it will come out as chest pain, it will come out as abdominal pain, and we're
anxiety attacks.
Anxiety, and we're so busy in our worlds that we okay, we'll have this Advil, and then the Advil causes stomach upset, and then on, and all of a sudden there are 3 subspecialists to find out what's wrong, and we sit with them and say, how are you experiencing all of this? And I just want my mom and dad to pay attention to me. I want them to put their phone away.
Okay, now I feel really guilty. Now,
that's a simplistic example, but
my daughter would probably tell. Who knows? She's 6. Maybe when she'll be a teenager and get quieter, that could happen. But she likes to talk about, this is what I'm feeling. John, on the other hand, he's the classic. What did you do today at school? I forget. What did you learn?
Yeah.
Nothing. Tell me what's going on. Nothing. So that's good listening I just did right there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So what do you do when you have somebody who's quieter, who isn't the one who's going to say, this is what I'm feeling?
Cool. I think one thing I would love to pick up on is sometimes gender is not, just male, female, and I get that, but there are classic ways that young women and young men kind of present differently, and girls tend to hold it in a little bit more, and we feel it in our bodies, the somatic symptoms, or just that pervasive anxiety. Young men are more likely to numb out. And so, how are you feeling? I'm fine. But it doesn't mean I really am fine.
Yeah.
So boys are twice as likely as young women to struggle with addictions because they're reaching for something external to soothe the system, and they're 5 times more likely to complete suicide. So it's not that they're not hurting, it just shows up differently.
So how do I avoid that?
Find a way to put your foot in the bedroom door.
Right.
Really, how do I find a way to make my young person know that whatever's going on for them, I can handle it?
And I think starting early, so when people come and they'll say, other healthcare providers will say, how do you do that with the adolescents? How do you do that? And I said, well, you've been seeing them since they were 2. To start developing that. And parents as well, start early. Have those spaces. My husband and I, we have this time where our kids just get to talk to one of us by themselves. They don't have to talk about anything. They can talk about anything they want to. But there's a lot of competition between sibs as well, and that can be very anxiety provoking.
Right.
And so, and there's no expectation about the day. It's just like, hey, what, how did you experience? Nothing. Sit, hang out. They talk. They do.
And I was just going to say another piece too. As a parent, you can talk as well about your emotional world. So it's a part of you that you really value, and you give space to it. Because we know that young people, they need to understand what is going on in their body. They might not have a word to describe it, but that's really important wisdom that comes out of what we know to be true. And we want to follow our gut on lots of stuff because it's really smart. And so as an adult, you can talk about something that happened that's appropriate, that really, really irritated you. And oh my gosh, my face, I'm sure it was bright red. I was so angry. And then oh my gosh, Dad, you have days like that? Or shocking, Dad, you cried? So there are some spaces where it sometimes is, I think our world, this is just the truth. It's not I think, it is the truth. We're socialized, young men are socialized more so, keep it in. You can show anger, right? And with that, it's like your card. But it's not so easy to show the vulnerable sadness piece.
I'm an expert in mics.
Thank you.
This is what I do.
And the same with young women, and I find this all the time, where I'm so angry at what they did to me. Ooh-hoo-hoo. And I'm like, you look sad, but if that happened to me, I would be pissed. And they're like, well, and it's like, I guess I was a bit frustrated. And I'm like, frustrated? It's okay to be angry. And so we're not really given a ton of permission as women to be angry, because you're called not the nicest word that starts with a B. And so there's a piece there too, right? And so normalizing, as a human, we all feel these things, and it's a beautiful part of us. For us to feel joy and happiness and excitement and pride and passion, you have to feel anger and sadness and hard work and wanting to give up. That is how we flow through life. Some of us are a bit more like this or like this, but you can't just do the good stuff and not get into the hard stuff. What happens is you're more numb, right?
Right. Go.
Because
here, well, and I can, before, and we kind of touched on it, but for people in the room, and here's the other, there's a piece of shame that I think is huge. First of all, that parents don't want to admit that they have kids who maybe are having trouble, and kids don't want to admit that they're the ones who are having trouble. So at what point do you say, is there identifiers that you can say, this is an issue? And so for the parents in the room, we're going, maybe this is my kid, but I don't know. Is there a one or two that say, look, if this is going on, you need to go and chat with someone?
So I think it's really important because a recent study showed that up to 30% of youth are challenged with anxiety disorders, different types, and 8% are having like extreme anxiety. So this is a really important topic, and we talked a little bit about healthy stress as well. It's okay. It's when they're not functioning, right? When they're not able to go to school. School avoidance, to me, is a hallmark of anxiety. So you can't function. Their jobs are to go to school. If you couldn't go to school, there's something wrong. They start to tell you that, Mommy, I got an upset stomach, or my chest is hurting, and this is new. If they're just uncontrollable worry, if their mannerisms have changed, if they look irritable. So things like that are out of context to the normal, and you're giving that space to have those conversations, then that would be when it's going over into that unhealthy, when it's impacting their lives, both at school and in their other activities.
Does that fit for you, or is there any other ones that's?
I think those are the big ones, and it's wonderful if you have someone you're raising a kid that says, hey, it's weird, I have racing thoughts every night when I go to sleep. It's been happening for exactly 3 months. I've done some research online, I'm pretty sure I've got anxiety, can I go talk to somebody? and like truly, like some youth will do that, but often it is not easy. There's feelings of, and especially when we're talking about young people that are living in homes that have enough food in the fridge. I've never been through a big trauma in my life. My mom and dad are actually pretty nice people. I don't know why I feel like this. There's no reason I should. And so when there's shame around even, and confusion as to why I feel this, it's really, really hard to say something's going on and it's scaring me, and I don't want to live like this. I need help. And so it's often stays in silence and in isolation for a lot longer than we'd hope. And the sooner it comes out, the sooner you can connect with your family doctor or phone a therapist and get some support. Or even schools. There are great resources at schools, guidance counselors and teachers that are super loving, and that's often a big part of the team that wraps around kids that are kind of wobbly on the inside.
And I think our society, we are the part of culture. We create culture, each one of us. And I think we are shifting. Look at how many people are in the room that support this. I think that we're recognizing, we still talk stigma, but I think we're getting better at that. But still, I still have people that come in and say, well, it would feel okay if they had diabetes. I could talk about that, but I don't feel comfortable talking about the fact that my daughter has social anxiety disorder because I'm a newscaster, or I'm like out in the limelight. It's really hard to do that. Or if they come in and they say, well, you know, how am I going to explain that the abdominal pain that we've had fully worked up is actually an anxiety disorder? You know, everyone thinks it's all in her head. And I say, well, our brains are in our head, and it's your central nervous system. Of course it's in your head, it's in your brain. It's all connected.
And
why
it's
do we have
attached to your body?
to your vagus nerve? It's all, we are all one. And when we start thinking that way, we don't have to be ashamed. We're all human beings with a brain that controls everything that is in our head. So none of this is in your head. It's all real.
Before I let you go, if there's people in the room who are saying, okay, I think I need to talk to somebody. Peter mentioned earlier, a lot of people think, well, I take them to emergency and they gave me some anti-anxiety and that was the end of it. What do I do if I'm nervous?
Well, first of all, I would say from a healthcare perspective, because I can speak from that, if you're worried about your young person and there may be also some physical symptoms going on, take them to your family doctor.
Yeah.
Family doctors are amazing. They're the front line and they're so good in this. And then if you feel that that's not, you know, the traction's not there, there is Access Mental Health. And then there's, you know, the ways of accessing things, and programs like this are just incredible.
Yeah.
But go that stepwise, especially if there's physical concerns, because they could have a thyroid problem that's making them anxious. They can have, and that's what I love about my job, is because I get to do both. I get to look at the whole person and be able to normalize all of this. So starting with your family doctor is really important.
Yeah.
I would say so. I think family doctor, I think letting young people know that they can access a guidance counselor at their school, and it's totally confidential. So I think that is a very safe space for people to go knock, knock, knock. Do you mind if I talk to you about something I'm not doing so well? And that's often where those hard conversations start and where listening happens, where you're like, oh, what you're talking about sounds like it's anxiety, or it sounds like you might have depression. Let's figure out what we can do with connecting with your family or a family doctor to get you the support that you need. So that might be a start
So
as
good.
well. And,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and trust the teachers that are helping to raise your kids for 6 hours a day. Reach out to a teacher that's a trusted friend of your young person, even if your young person is 17 years old. Teachers are so good at helping to love up and regulate our kids. And a lot of teachers, if they're pretty open people, will be pretty honest about some of their own struggles on I also know what anxiety is like, and my gosh, there's no way that I'm gonna have someone in my class freaking out. I want them to know that they can come talk to me, because if they get that validation and a quick little hug, you can go, whew, okay, I'm ready to learn. And that's one thing that I think is really crummy, an extra piece that's crummy when we're struggling with any sort of mental health issue. It stops us from being present and learning what we're supposed to do. Just be a kid, just be a teen. So there's real reasons for what can we do on a daily basis to help dial down that anxiety for our kids. And we model it to our kids daily. If we aren't showing up regulated,
They won't.
it's hard. It makes it harder, right?
I can't imagine how many parents who have met either of you who were so stressed and so worried and so ashamed, and then they met you and they went, oh my God, it's going to be okay. And you give us a taste of that today. The Lionheart Foundation gave us a taste of that today. And we're so lucky you're here. Tasha and April, can we thank them both for being part of this?